Welcome everyone. My name is Tristan Claridge and I'm the convener of this webinar series for the International Social Capital Association. Now, the association's mission is to advance the research and application of the social capital concept, and we're welcoming new members and we're holding a conference in Dubai next year if you want to come along to the first major international gathering of social capital researchers in over 25 years. In this session, we welcome Sidney Peimer for a presentation titled Social Capital in the Age of AI. Does current pedagogy help students build real connections in a virtual world? Sidney, known to most as Sid, is a passionate lecturer at the Red and Yellow Creative School of Business in South Africa, where he brings marketing strategy and research to life for Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Commerce students. He also leads Honours Level Creative Leadership Program, guiding the next generation of changemakers. With a career that spans civil society, ICT, education, healthcare, retail, government, and more, Sid combines sharp analytical thinking with a creative spark. These days, he's pursuing a PhD in marketing, focusing on how social capital shapes the future of students' lives. For Sid, it's all about exploring how relationships and network can open doors to opportunity and well-being. Known for his warm and engaging style, Sid has a gift for making complex ideas accessible and, dare we say, even fun. And, in case you were wondering, he's also the proud 1972 PAL Coca-Cola Yo-Yo champion. Yes, really, he in fact is. So we're delighted you've agreed to give this webinar. Welcome, Sid, and over to you for the presentation.
Welcome everybody. I know the official title is a bit of a mouthful: Social Capital, AI, Pedagogy, Students, Real Connections, Virtual World. But basically, I'm also going to wrap it in context. And so on the top right, I've put my work, my life, so you can see the context of what I'm doing. And Tristan, thank you so much for this invitation. The International Social Capital Association has been immensely valuable in my work, as I'll show in the presentation. Before I joined Red and Yellow, I was the CEO of the Cape Chamber of Commerce for a period of 7 years. And the Cape Chamber is the oldest and largest chamber of commerce on the African continent. And it's a voluntary business association, which means you're dependent on membership. But unlike membership to Netflix, if you don't pay your membership, you don't get your Netflix. The Chamber of Commerce voluntary membership's a little different. The benefits are largely intangible. But what I did notice was that when people join, the reason they often cited for joining was networking. But what really surprised me was the lack of agency people exhibited for networking. So, they wouldn't attend that many functions. When they were at a function, the agency was very tempered. And that always surprised me and interested me. And that's how I started my journey on my PhD, where I was focusing on networking agency by members of voluntary business associations. However, what happened when I stepped down about 4 or 5 years ago, I got back into academia and I changed my population under investigation from business people to students, predominantly Gen Z students. So fast forward to today. My thesis is titled, my proposed thesis is titled A Framework of South African Students' Future Marketing Orientation Influenced by Social Media and Social Capital. And what I will do is just show you the conceptual framework, but we'll go to a much simpler representation. But you can see there's a block on the left, which is social media engagement. And the reason for me including that variable was that the faculty where I'm doing the PhD publishes a lot of articles on social media, Instagram and trust and those type of variables. But the head of department and my supervisor has a focus on social media, so I wanted to include that as well. And I also wanted to include social media because it's so pervasive in students' lives. And that obviously has a number of influences, unfortunately, many negative. And then bridging social capital is the other variable that I wanted to look at, which I brought across from my previous studies. And it was also because of the goal-directed outcome of a student. When a student starts studying, their goal is usually to stop, but stop with a certificate or a degree. And bridging social capital is related to outcomes, but I'm going to go over that shortly. And then I wanted to include a uniquely African aspect to the thesis. And community orientation, you might have heard of this word, is measured with Ubuntu, and there's a specific scale that's used for it. And then I'll use that as a moderator variable. So just to simplify that diagram, my independent variable is social media engagement, which is a very specific construct. My other mediator variable, which is also an independent one, is bridging social capital. And then the moderator variable to see how that influences my dependent variable, which is a future marketing orientation. And the reason I've chosen future marketing orientation is that the PhD is happening in the marketing department, and I wanted to focus on something specific to marketing as the dependent variable. I want to now go even further back. Now when I lecture, I mentioned something the other day. I was lecturing and I said, we've got to look at story structure. If you look at the movie Witness, you can see a clear Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and the students looked at me all puzzled. And they said, what movie was that? So, the movie Witness, it won Best Oscar in 1986. And they said to me, Sid, we weren't born in 1986. So I get very careful when I recall certain events. But my undergrad qualification was pharmacy, where we did 4 years of undergrad chemistry. And I loved chemistry because the world is very, very organized at molecular level. Okay, water is always H2O with the H 56.85 picometers from the oxygen, and it covers 2/3 of the world. So you could say 2/3 of the world is organized. But it's and the nomenclature is very simple, actually, so why it appealed to me is that there is so much underlying structure in our lives at molecular level. And I sometimes lie in bed at night and I want to put my wife's mind at ease and show her, what the lines mean and what the letters mean, so she can feel that there is some structure in our lives. And I think it works very well because she falls asleep very quickly. Now, if we look at some images of chemical structures, and you look at this one, there's a benzene ring there, and there's some bigger circles with a color and two smaller circles, and you could start interpreting this image to represent a network of people. So we can see that person there at the top left has maybe got 2 children, not connected to this network, and in this network at the bottom left there's an orange person and some light blue people, so that's quite a heterogeneous network. So it doesn't take a far stretch of the imagination to interpret these molecular diagrams as networks, which it did for me. So then I thought, well, where can I find a network that's reminiscent of molecular structure. And also what interested me was, molecules behave in a certain way, and very much like people, you get stable molecules, unstable molecules, and molecules that bond easily to others, some that don't. So I wanted to look for the rules of networks, but with people networks, as opposed to just molecules. And I didn't have far to look if I was wanting to look for networks that related to students and bridging social capital. And for those of you new to social capital, I am going to revisit that briefly in a few minutes. So the first theoretical framework that I found, and most of us do quote Mark Granovetter as a seminal theory. And Mark Granovetter is credited with the strength of weak ties, SWT theory. And if you look at that diagram, and let's call A a student, and B could be a parent, and C could be one of the students in their class. In other words, those are what we call strong ties. Okay, those are people that are close to you. And G would be a more distant tie. Now, what Mark Granovetter, his dependent variable, or the outcome of his research was, did they get a job after qualifying? And he found that those students who activated their weak ties were more successful in finding a job than those who activated their strong ties. And if you think about it, it's pretty logical. Let's say B's a parent. I mean, they love you dearly. They want you to get a job so you can get out the house. So they're motivated to do it. But who's going to know more about a job opportunity in a sector that you're looking at? Let's say you're looking at the ad industry or marketing industry. And G is someone you knew about a number of years, or maybe you went to school with them. They know who you are, and they're working in actually the agency that you want to get a job. So which tie is going to be more valuable, G or B? B's a closer tie, and G's a more distant tie, but the real valuable connection is G. They have information that relates to the industry that you're interested in joining. A number of years later, Ronald Burt came up with another, was considered a seminal theory of structural holes. And if you look at the circle on the right, X, B, Y are employees in an organization. And if we look at A here, A could be an employee in this organization that has stepped out for a while, and A is now talking to three other people in three other organizations. It doesn't have to be a business organization. It can be social organizations. It could be a sports club. It could be anything. And where A interacts with the other alter, we call that a structural hole. And this research was done on tech companies, and the outcome that we were looking for was a valuable innovation. And yes, what Ronald Burt found was that those individuals that exhibited more structural holes were in organizations that showed more valuable innovation. Okay, so hopefully I'm giving you some kind of feel for the nature of ties and bridging social capital. So let's just go back to social capital. I'm not going to read through all these in great detail. It is in the presentation for reference, especially for those who are new to social capital. But Bordeaux is one of the first authors, modern authors that we refer to with social capital research. And he talks about durable networks of institutionalized relationships. Coleman talks about social structure that facilitates certain actions, and Putnam, that you might know, Robert Putnam, who likes to be called Bob, he wrote Bowling Alone, which you may have read, and he refers to norms and social trust. So let's just use a very simple example. Let's say you need your light bulb is fused outside and it's a bit high. You need a ladder and you don't have a ladder. According to Bordeaux, you'd leverage your durable network. Who's a durable network? The people that are always around. You can't choose your relatives. So maybe your cousin will lend you a ladder. In terms of Coleman, well, what facilitates the lending? We actually have a WhatsApp group in our complex, and I could just put I need a ladder on the WhatsApp group, and it would relate a little to Coleman's definition. And in Putnam, well, the norm is we all lend each other stuff, and I could quite easily get a ladder from my neighbor. Okay, so that just gives you some basis, but Bordeaux, Coleman, and Putnam are usually mentioned in all literature reviews when it comes to social capital. But I'm more interested in social capital in education, and there are two that I found. Well, Lynn, we use frequently Lynn's theory of network capital. And Lynn defines social capital as resources embedded in one social network that can be accessed or mobilized through ties in the networks. However, there's a more recent one, which I found I could relate to in terms of bridging social capital and students. Social capital describes students' access to and the ability to mobilize. Now here agency comes in. Relations, and now it's goal directed, relationships that help them further their potential and their goals. Okay, so it's resources, it's agency, specifically for the work that I'm involved in. Okay, so those of you who know social capital, let me just go over these. It'll be nothing new to you. Those new to social capital, we predominantly, since bowling alone came out, we talk about bonding social capital, which were those close ties I spoke about earlier, your parents, people you study with, but bridging social capital, more distant connections, and they foster access to new information and opportunities, and they're for goal-directed outcomes. But, sometimes it's not so clear, like most things in life. And I found this quote: studying with others impacts examination success, with results robust to differences in socioeconomic strata and cognitive abilities. So it's kind of bridging. Well, I need to get mates with it. When I studied, you had three resources. You had the lecturer, the textbook, and the clever person in class who had a neat handwriting. So studying with others is an element of bonding because you see these people all the time. And there's a heterogeneity element as well, and your own cognitive ability to, can I keep up with this group, or do I just see things differently? And a neurodivergence obviously has become a really prominent, what shall I call it, frame that we deal with, especially at a creative institution such as ours. Neurodivergence is more an aspect of a person struggling with their neurodiversity, which just conflicts with what's required for the environment. So that's a whole new field, and my knowledge on that is limited. So yeah, is it bonding? Is it bridging? Sometimes it's not 100% clear. But the question I had, especially for my thesis, was how do we measure bridging social capital? Okay, so we can look at the network itself. How many friends do you have on Facebook? It's a way of measuring social capital online, although they aren't really friends. Your connections on LinkedIn, how different are the people that you speak to? So we can look at the network itself, and there are many ways, but there are also generators. In other words, there are name generators. Can you name specific people? And would they know who you are? They're position generators. Do I know people high up in government? Do I speak to the person, our janitor? And then there are resource generators. Now, what happened was I chose resource generators for my study. And you may ask the question, but why did you just go straight to resource generators? I didn't. What happened was I used my bridging social capitals. We had a wonderful presentation that Tristan organized by Adrian Gentry. And it was social capital assessments in higher education, and it was a systematic literature review. So Adrian had done all my foundational work. So I thought, oh, crikey, I've got to leverage this tie. And I asked Adrian if they would meet with me, and Adrian said, sure. And we spoke for an hour, and Adrian's professional advice was to base it on the work of this author, which he pronounced in a very different, he pronounced it Van der Gag or something, and I struggled to get that. But in America, this is a Dutch author, and it's actually Van der Gaag and Snyder, but the Americans pronounce it Van der Gag. But once we sorted that out, I found the reference, I found the paper, and so Adrian saved me probably 4 months of work, and I proceeded accordingly. So thanks to Iska and to Adrian. What are resource generators? Okay, well, basically there are 4 categories. I know people related to prestige and education. Some of these headings are a little misleading. Prestige and education means access to knowledge. Political and financial, personal. Is there someone who will help me if I phone them at 12 o'clock from the hospital? And all that relates to support. Personal is practical help with everyday life. And we see some really interesting aspects emerging from our school, where we have a very heterogeneous, in terms of socioeconomic status, students. And I do find that sometimes students who are less affluent have a stronger personal social structure. But let's proceed to the 4. Okay, so I'm going to go through this quite quickly because this is just a framework that I've put together regarding the activities that we do. And the outcome, there are probably a number of confounding variables, but we have a 94% placement rate 6 months after qualifying at red and yellow. So 94% of the students find a job within 6 months. And compare that to the unemployment rate in South Africa for young people, which is close to 60%. So compare 94% to 40%. Maybe there's some significance there, but that's just anecdotal, but we do get that result. So if we look at prestige in education now, the variables that I'm going to mention 3 in each section. I'm going to go through them quite quickly. And ethical use, I don't know why we say ethical use of AI. It's like telling a smoker it's bad for their health. So it's AI, which is a 24/7 study buddy. Okay, it promotes academic self-efficacy. It's continuous, it's immediate, and also the way AI has improved over the past year. It certainly really enabled me to elevate my thinking. Advanced presentation skills is also prestige in education. How do you get judged in a new job? When you do your first presentation. And a lot of Gen Zs live their life on social media, and imagining what things are like and standing up in front of a group of people and presenting are 2 different things. So they tend to avoid it. So I forced them through it. I called it Hell Week. It wasn't that bad. It was a safe environment. But I didn't want this thigh slapping and the ums and the ahs and, looking at the ceiling. And they have to communicate prestigiously as well. and exposure to industry professionals. We call professionals in to come and give guest talks, and very often the industry professional will say, here's my email and contact me. So once again, we're going to come to agency a little later. So yeah, related to prestige and education, these are the three elements of what we do. So this is just a framework that we've put together. Political and financial, we place them, all universities have work integrated or work-placed learning where they spend time at a company and they accrue career capital, employability, and an experienced worldview. In other words, sometimes they're quite shocked to start in an ad agency and it's just an office with a desk. So it also tempers expectations. Awareness of an entrepreneurial orientation. The construct of entrepreneurial orientation is proactivity, innovation, and appetite for risk, and then give them some awareness of that. And then the alumni networks. In other words, you now have a reason to contact someone in that organization that studied in, you now have something in common. You can contact that person and say, listen, I hope you don't mind, but I see you also studied here and you've got this. Can you spare me a few minutes of your time? And, the default rule is people like to help. So political and financial, that category, those are three things that we do. And then personal relates to exposure to real world challenge. So we will get a brand in that has a real world challenge. And we expose them to that. And then group work is really, when we interview for your job, you want to know you can do the job, but that you're going to add value to my team. Okay. And working with others is a crucial skill today. And we don't just put them into groups. We they have to produce a team charter. So we will put you into a group. You can't choose your group like real life. Well, to a degree, I suppose you can. But when you start working, there were some people you wouldn't have chosen to work with, but that's organizational life. And we then set you up. We give you the readings, what to do when this goes wrong in a group, how to set parameters for the group, and we put them through a somewhat extensive formation process. They also have to have a team building exercise and provide photographic proof so that they learn that, if you just don't expect just to merge with a group and perform off the bat. And then cross-program collaboration. We've got BA students on campus that do a BA mainly in visual communication. And then I've got my BCom students. And then if we can get them to cross-collaborate with a different skill set, having obviously a shared goal. They have the same brief. Then support, emotional, instrumental help, knowing someone who will and can help. We are also judged as an organization on the degree of community outreach that we have, and that provides a realistic foundations of who they are and promoting agency, but agency of purpose. You want to output good people that are positive role models. And now I'm mentioning AI again. And then I actually went to AI and I said, AI, why is AI featuring so predominantly? And it gave me three reasons. Firstly, it impacts grades, which is the goal-directed outcome, why they're there. It's equal access. You don't have to be rich or poor. Go to ChatGPT, go to elicit.com, go to SciSpace, and it mitigates academic isolation. And it deals with time pressure. You've got to deliver something. And at 10 o'clock at night, I've got to hand in tomorrow and I haven't done this section. It's available. So it deals with time pressures as well. So ethical, well, I keep using the word ethical, but AI use is just crucial support. And in social capital, you get alters and actants. alters are sometimes also referred to as actors. And then you get actants, and actants are the non-sentient elements of a network. So that's email, the email program, that's AI, it's there are various things that aren't sentient that are part of your network. And for example, is the electricity in the pylon, or is it the pylons and the structure that's the contribution to social capital? So the pylons and the lines would be the actants for providing us that network social capital. Okay, so I've just, those of you who are in education may be interested in that. So I've just gone briefly through those. And then Tristan had a guest, I can't remember. Oh, Julia Fisher a while ago, who spoke on approaches to measuring student social capital. Once again, was um, the sweet spot for me. And she gave a lovely presentation. And in the presentation was this diagram. And what Julia said was that what students, the intersection between what students know and who they know is where opportunity lies. That's that old saying, it's not what you know till you know. And I thought about that, and I thought, hang on a minute. Maybe I can add to that, which I did. And I added a third ring, and that third ring was agency. Okay, and what students can do. Okay, and I felt that, sorry, I've referenced myself there, ego. Where opportunity lies is at the intersection of what you know, who you know, but what you can and want to do. Okay, so let's now get to okay. So that opens a whole new stream of research. In other words, you could look at it from various theoretical frameworks, in entrepreneurial orientation, a Carol Dweck's work of a growth mindset, the big five personality traits, or Martin Seligman's work of learned optimism. He wrote the most amazing book. I think it was called Learned I can't remember what it's called. I think it was Learned Optimism. He wrote another book recently. It wasn't great, but his first book was brilliant. And that also, so it's opened up, I feel, a whole lot of, and then also recently, I haven't mentioned it yet, Friedrich Schiffer's dual brain psychology, which is also absolutely fascinating. But let me not go on a tangent here. Okay, so in other words, agency is something that spoke to me. Then I read Tristan's book, which I highly recommend. And in Tristan's book, he says, okay, and he just encapsulated this beautifully. The potential that we call social capital has two main components. Firstly, the opportunity or ability to act. For example, to collaborate, to interact positively and work together. And not only the opportunity, okay, so placing you in a context where you can act, giving you a cell phone so you can phone someone. It's the inclination, motivation, or predisposition to act. Okay, and I felt that just encapsulated the role of agency for me in a social capital when investigating in terms of students. For example, that the students have to find their own workplace learning assignment, and to just instruct. If you want to go to this company, why don't you just phone them? Okay, so their phone number is on the internet. I mean, you can phone them, and it'll tell you who the marketing director is. So you can phone them and ask for the marketing director. But also, the ability to act is important. So also teaching them, you can ask for the marketing director, but what's going to happen is their PA is going to say, "Can I help you?" Which is a filter, and you'll say, "Yes, please. I don't even know if I'm in the right place. I'm looking for," because people intuitively like to help. Um, and then so they've got the opportunity, the ability, the inclination, the motivation, and the predisposition to act. Okay, so that to me encapsulates. So let's get back to agency. Let me take you back to 2010, I think, when I ran the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry. On the left is Clem Sunter, who's our most prevalent futurist and worked with Nelson Mandela in the 1940s. And although the future didn't work out the way he predicted. And then on the right is Julius Malema. You might have seen Kill the Boer on TV. But I wanted to have a debate with two people who had opposing views. I felt it's important. I want to know, we all think that, oh, the world would be such a better place if everybody thought like me. Okay, so I wanted to give our members exposure to different ways of thinking. And although I don't like Julius's marketing angle, um, he was very good to me. He was very obliging, and he came and he gave that talk, and we had over 6 million views, which was a lot for a Chamber of Commerce. So I exhibited agency. I phoned Clem, I phoned Julius. I said, would you prepare to come to? Yeah, sure. And they came, and it was absolutely fine. And I themed it the Rumble in the Urban Jungle after that fight with Muhammad Ali. I think it was Joe Frazier. Um, and we then had a series of these. The only problem, oh, sorry, it's gone back. No, let me go forward. My apologies. I then had a series, and I think I pushed the envelope a little too much. I went with Andile Mknitama, and he is the leader of Black First, Land First, and Darby Ruitt, who's also quite an outspoken economist and has a lot of exposure in South Africa. The only problem is that this was now probably over the line when it came to controversy, especially with a brand such as the Chamber of Commerce, which is politically neutral, and I couldn't find sponsorship. So, and now I thought, hang on a minute, I need to get sponsorship for this thing. So I went to the pet shop down the road, and I bought a large plastic chicken. And when you're a CEO of a Chamber of Commerce, all these delegations visit you and they bring you gifts. And I think Malaysia brought me a beautiful gift in a long box, and it looked perfect as a coffin for the chicken. And we've got a brand in South Africa called Nando's. And Nando's like to push the envelope as well, politically as well. They'll rip things off. And I think Nando's, I'm not sure if it's in Australia or New Zealand, but I know it's now in the UK, and it's a popular brand. It's the food's great. And they've got this off-the-wall brand identity. And together with the chicken and the box, I then put this ransom note, which said, we have this chicken's kid. We want R1 million in sponsorship, or the kid gets it. Contact Dave or Sid on that number to negotiate release. Don't even think of calling the police. Don't play games with us. We know where you work. And I sent a picture of an egg with a hammer hovering above the egg. I don't know if we'll get away with something like this today. Unfortunately, kidnapping has become somewhat of a cottage industry. But 6, 7 years ago, I suppose it was humorous, but more important than humorous, it was effective. Nando's phoned me and said, Sid, listen, we get like 20 to 30 applications a day, but you broke through. And they didn't give me R1 million, but they sponsored. They came down. They were great. And then I sent them an egg after the event in full and final recognition of the deal. So what I'm saying is, it's not enough to have just agency. You have to have creative agency as well in certain circumstances when there is a goal-directed outcome. There were 30 other people looking for sponsorship, okay, but we had to break through. So, accruing, bridging social capital, in summary, is not just what you know, It's not just who you know, it's also what you're able and prepared to do. Folks, I've got all my references here if you need them, and thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Sid. Such a fascinating presentation, and great to see the references to some of the previous ISCA webinars as well. It's always
Oh,
great to
yeah.
see that they've been useful. So we'll have some time now for questions and some discussion. So feel free to either raise your hand within Zoom, which you'll find under the React button, or you can post in the chat. If you do want to post in the chat, when I call upon you, you can unmute yourself to read your question. Or alternatively, if you're not in a position to unmute yourself, just let me know in the chat and I'll happily read the question on your behalf. So Sid, perhaps I can start while we're seeing what questions other people have. Perhaps I can start. As I travel around and I talk with people, just about every single person I talk with is really concerned about AI and how it might change the way we interact with each other. So what are your thoughts on that? Are we looking at a grim future, or maybe it's not going to be so bad?
Okay. There are two aspects to that. The one aspect is AI's impact on society generally, and there are a few danger points, obviously. The other context is AI in education. I think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to education. It certainly has assisted me. I know that if you're going to do or treat assignments in the same way, and you're going to depend on constrained use of AI of your students, it's not going to work. We have to embrace it. Already, was it this? Yes, this year, at the beginning of this year, we had in their formative examinations compulsory use of AI. You had to use AI for certain sections to just get over the fact that every time you're using AI, you're not stealing and you now got to get away with it. There are certain challenges. There are the humanizers now that you can put your AI generated content through. You can complete your PhD in a weekend if you've got all the papers and you just upload it to thesis.ai, and then stick it through a humanizer. You can there are a lot of shortcuts, but I kind of, when I went to school, you had to learn up to the 24 times table. We didn't understand why, because we did have calculators. And then we realized the world wouldn't be the same again when they load a calculator into your counting exam. So, yeah, did we lose some capacity when we had to stop mentally calculating? We probably did lose something, but I don't think anyone's ever brought it up. It's obviously not that, it's not that relevant to our cognitions. So when it comes to education, it has hit us. Okay, so we're kind of like a deer in headlights in a way. The initial reaction by universities was to uh, restrain the use of AI and to try and contain it. But when they invented the wheel, contain the wheel, contain fire. Only got to boil vegetables. So yeah, but I think it's a great. It does give us now a fuel for really foundational debates, such as, well, if you don't need knowledge anymore, why am I spending 3 years at the institution gaining knowledge? Because knowledge doesn't have that value anymore. And then obviously the creative industries reacted and said, oh, AI can't be creative. Well, can be a damn sight more creative than me at times. So yeah, it's just in its early days. I think the containment of AI in education, I don't know, was the wrong route. We've now got these policy documents. I've never read them, but I mean, it's but and for me personally, it's really freed me up to do some higher order thinking, or to do more thinking to get me into more trouble. But yeah, so but when it comes to AI's impact on society, I know there are some real fears about where that can go, but I don't know if I'm qualified. I haven't really investigated that to any degree. And then you've got the other debates, replacing jobs, doing menial tasks. But now with AI, it takes me less than half the time to prepare a formative exam than it did before. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and a rubric. I mean, who's going to do a rubric manually? Just get AI to do the rubric and then just fix it quickly. Um, so yeah, I think AI um, will eventually be a positive influence on education, but we now need to separate education and knowledge. Somebody phoned me for some legal advice. I typed it in, got the advice. I gave them the advice, said, yeah, my lawyer said so as well. So, where does the value of knowledge lie? And then there's the debate, well, a copy that's generated by AI doesn't have as much resonance as human written copy. Well, I don't know. Sometimes I write an article and and AI wrote a much better one. Let me just use that one. Um, and that one's going to resonate a lot better with the readers. I don't need them to resonate with my personality. I need them to resonate with the content. So, yeah, a lot of knee-jerk reactions. Um, and our holding company also has formed a task team for AI, which I'm on. And yeah, so it's been a positive influence. And yeah, unfortunately, in addition to the humanizer, you also get websites now that write your paper for you by humans who use AI and then clean it up. So that's an enormous industry as well. How you control that, I really, I really don't know. I know that there are applications now where the person hands in their assignment, which they've done open book or at home, and then AI generates certain questions that looks at ownership of the content, and you do that in a closed book environment, a proctored, not proctored, what do you call that word? In We use Invigilator for our distance students in that environment, so yeah, that there's some ownership of content, but we haven't. I haven't even implemented it. Um, so yeah, so in a way it is a challenge, but I think it's also an opportunity, and we'll have to work with that going forward. But yes, for at-home assignments, um, has AI helped? Has humanizers played a role? And has the human services for writing papers is a burgeoning business. Um, we Also the tutor business is just enormous because today people are quite isolated. You're not really connected on social media, and so the tutor business is enormous, absolutely enormous.
Yeah, so questions come
Rohita
up in
has
the
asked
chat, but
about trust.
yeah.
Okay.
What do you have to say about
Rita,
that?
when you mention trust, is that in terms of social capital or um, in terms of AI use? Oh, you've said further to your topic. Sorry, I should have read that properly. I could waffle on about something and trust, but there's a person in the room that's a lot more qualified than me to talk about trust in social capital, and that's Tristan. So, Tristan, what are your thoughts on trust?
Well, trust is complicated. I think, it's contingent often on context and on circumstance. So its direct relationship to social capital, I think, is an interesting one because social capital, as any form of capital, needs to be something that has residual value. It needs to have some sort of stability to it, whereas trust seems to be quite contingent. And it's clearly very important, but exactly how it relates to social capital, I think, is an interesting question.
Yeah, there is one application, for example, we used to have all these networking functions, and the one question you want to ask is, what do you do? Uh, well, you might get two answers. The one answer might be, I'm an Uber driver. The other answer might be, I'm a doctor. And your trust index will vary significantly once you have stereotyped that person. So trust facilitates a social capital, but as Tristan says, it's quite a complex element to relationships. But I think trust, and we normally go to the same people because we trust them to behave in a certain way. From my perspective, and a very simple answer is that, yeah, trust sets your expectations and then influences your agency.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think the points you made about AI as well are very relevant. That it's a tool that's extremely valuable and we're learning to use. But I think the general concern is that if it's replacing human interaction, then what does that mean for social capital? And perhaps one way of thinking about that is that if you and I interact, then there's something left over after that. And we're calling that basically social capital. But if AI replaces our interaction, then there is no residual value. If the same interaction can occur with AI, then there is no person behind that can help you later, that you can develop trust with, that you can access their knowledge
Yeah,
or their skills and what they can do. And so the
yeah.
dynamics of how we're interacting could change quite considerably through our use of AI.
Yeah, from a bridging social capital perspective, I remember, well, LinkedIn obviously is the platform in business that relates most to social capital, a bridging social capital. And I remember when LinkedIn started sending me titles or themes and saying to me, "You're an expert in this topic. Would you like to comment?" And I looked at the topic and it didn't make sense. It was just nonsense that obviously AI in the early days they just put together. And people were responding to this. And people were commenting, and that to me is misuse of AI. I just, you know, you can a lot of things on social media that are unfortunately very disturbing. This was just a strategy for engagement as opposed, I don't know what LinkedIn's core vision is, but that just, and people were commenting and they were swallowing this rubbish. And, yeah. So that was just one example of misuse of AI to stimulate bridging social capital.
Yeah, and to take your point about bridging social capital as well, like you used the example of legal advice, and I went to school with someone who's now a lawyer. But
Ah,
very recently, I needed some very, very simple, it wasn't exactly complicated legal advice, and I used ChatGPT. And I was happy with the result that I received. And I didn't reach out to my friend from school, and because he could have given me that advice, of course, and would have been very happy to do so. And so I haven't maintained that relationship by reaching out to him and seeking advice from him. I got it from
ah,
ChatGPT. So we can see
yeah.
how the maintenance even of these bridging ties might be significantly
Mm,
disrupted by the use of AI. So I think there's some interesting things that are going to be happening in the future as we learn how to
mm,
navigate the use of these interesting technologies.
yeah.
So anybody who has a question, feel free to either post in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll happily come to you for any kind of comment or question. And of course, feel free to have some input on the discussion we're currently having. So Sid, how close to the end of your research are you? You just about finished? Not sure if we've got any questions coming in. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Sid, about the research that you've been doing? Anything that comes to mind?
Um, yeah, I just wish I could. progress a little faster, but I think that's the nature of academia. Also changing my population under investigation was a whole new change, and the dependent variable changing that. Yeah, but I must say, with ISCA keeping, I just feel that you allow me to keep my variable of social capital alive through these interactions, as opposed to just reading journal articles. And I wish I could make Dubai next year, but on the rand, I don't know.
Yeah,
So all
that's a
that
good
remains for
plug.
me to do is just thank you so much.
No, my pleasure, Sid. It's been really great to have you here, and that was a good plug for our conference next year in Dubai. If anybody's interested, the call for abstracts is currently open for the first international conference on social capital. We're going to have Professor Bob Putnam is going to be one of the keynote presenters, so it'll be a fantastic opportunity to hear him live and in person and in Dubai. So thanks everyone for taking part. Next week, our webinar is on social work, leading with social wealth, sorry, and that's going to be by Shelley Doyle. Details are on our website. The video of this will be available, and look forward to seeing you all again. Sid, once again, thanks very much for taking the time to give this presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.